Hi, I'm Shan Wu with an Under Color of Law analysis of the lawsuit filed by the Florida Attorney General against FEMA. Now, what the AG in Florida is alleging is that a FEMA supervisor told workers to skip over certain houses during the relief help for Hurricane Milton that might be displaying Trump signs. The Florida Attorney General is Attorney Moody, who previously had joined other MAGA AGs in claiming the 2020 election was invalid. What is this case really about? Well, let's take a listen to what AG Moody says it's about first.
This is exactly what Trump has been saying all along. They're not just out to get me, they're out to get you, and I want to stop that. I want to rid that from our agencies. Florida's going to help him do that.
Now, the FEMA worker who was fired, and I think that FEMA administration was a little bit too quick to disparage the worker. The worker has a very reasonable explanation of what's really going on here, so let's take a listen to them.
But if you ask the DSA crew leads and specialists what they are experiencing in the field, they will tell you. Demand for FEMA to give you those incident reports. They will substantiate what is happening to us in the field.
So you see, the point is that she's saying they weren't looking to discriminate on the basis of politics the way AG Moody wants to make it sound like, oh, the president-to-be is saying they're all out to get you on the basis of politics. Really, what they were reacting to was the fear that there could be danger to FEMA workers. And that's why that worker, who probably normally wouldn't have been speaking but is forced to since she's being made a scapegoat out of and has been terminated, she's saying that they had a policy to avoid any kind of confrontations, and that it was clear to them that there were certain kinds of folks who were not welcoming to FEMA being there, and we've read a lot about that as well. But it's really an unforced error by FEMA to so quickly hang their employee out to dry, because now that employee has to defend themselves, very adverse to them, and the employee isn't being sort of really careful about how they describe it, so it gives rise to this idea that there could be a much broader kind of policy at work. What this does is it really plays right into the MAGA hands, making them, being FEMA, look guilty, and they're looking to scapegoat someone right away. But the case is mostly a political stunt, and there was real threats of danger to the workers. And I'll put up this article for you to take a look at. There's a guy arrested for threatening them. But it's really due to Trump and the MAGA world trying to come up with these conspiracy theories of saying that the federal government is actually causing weather disasters or doesn't want the people who are in the red areas to have the relief. They're the ones that had created this circumstance where there is a lot of apprehension and even danger to the actual workers who are doing that kind of relief. So, of course, having created that problem, they want to use it now to their advantage. And by the way, what's the real reason that Trump and his regime would not have wanted people to get aid in natural disasters? Well, when they're out of power, they don't want the aid to come, because if the aid doesn't come, they can blame the current administration for the aid not going. So they'd like to make it really hard for aid workers to get there, make the populace want to turn it away, and then of course people actually need help and they can say, hey, we got no help here whatsoever. That's the really political scapegoating aspect of it, which just hurts the actual citizens, hurts the people that really need the help. So how can we tell just how politically motivated this lawsuit is? It's always helpful to look at the lawsuit itself, and one of the things I'll do in having to scan things quickly, because sometimes we only have a few minutes before we go on air to take a look at something, is I'll go down to what's called the prayer for relief. And it always makes me think of people praying for help, and that's where it comes from. You go down to the end of the complaint where they've gone through already all the facts, all the different counts, all the sites, and what is it that they're actually asking for? So here, if you take a look at the prayer for relief in the complaint, They're asking for what we call declaratory relief. That's a declaration that the government has done wrong. FEMA did something wrong. They're also asking for nominal damages and punitive damages. So the difference there is the nominal damages, those go to what we consider to be out-of-pocket, compensatory damages. Those would be kind of hard to show here. You'd have to find people whose houses actually were skipped over, that they actually had a Trump sign in their yard, which might be a little bit hard to identify with all the damage, and then find that they actually didn't get any help. Those would be really compensatory damages for those people who at the moment actually aren't in the suit yet either. It's really Florida trying to assert those claims on their behalf. That's why the suit just asks for nominal damages, meaning it's symbolic. It could be $1, it could be $2. Where the money would really come in is in the punitive damages. Punitive damages are meant to punish, as the word implies, and it's meant to teach a lesson. Don't do this again. So that's significant. They're asking for that. And then there's attorney's fees. Some of these claims that they're putting forth could have the right to statutory attorney's fees. FYI, in the American system, unless there's a statutory right, it's built into the law for attorney's fees. The American rule is really each side pays its own. I get people asking me all the time, if we win, can we get attorney's fees? The answer is generally no. But there are some statutes that say the prevailing party can get the attorney fees. So what they're really looking for is the declarative relief. And oftentimes, something that is being played for political motivation is going to want that declaratory judgment to say that we're right. Now, Attorney General Moody also says this is going to be very fast. She's going to be pushing for quick discovery, but it's not going to be very fast. It's going to be very factually bound, and anything that's very factually bound is not going to be fast. They may have fired the employee really fast, too fast, but that doesn't mean that the suit is going to go very quickly at all, because there's going to be a lot of factual issues about what was their policy, what were people told, were houses actually skipped over, did people suffer if the houses were skipped over, etc. Not to mention factual discovery about what kind of a threat environment they were in and what does FEMA normally do when there's a threat environment. You notice when the employee talks, they talk about trying to de-escalate and such. That assumes they're already facing a confrontation. If it was FEMA trying to make a more clear statement about their policy, it wouldn't have been reduced to sounding like, oh, there's someone yelling at me, what do I do? Which is what the employee was making it sound like. Not their fault, they're being hung out to dry, they're just trying to explain what they were thinking at the time. Now, to make things more awkward, when the Trump DOJ takes over, they would be in the position of having to defend FEMA because the agencies don't defend themselves. They may have lawyers that are consulting, they're essentially the client. The lawyer for federal agencies is the Department of Justice. DOJ is the nation's lawyer. And they have a specific division, the civil division, and there's a section there, probably the one called federal programs, which defends federal programs. So that's going to be very awkward because the Trump DOJ would have to be defending against this lawsuit. They'd have to perhaps concede the lawsuit if they don't want to defend it against a MAGA attorney general. But what does that mean? They could try to say, okay, we were wrong. That's the declaratory relief. But they're sure not going to be wanting to pay punitive damages out of their own budget. So it's quite muddled because of the politicized aspect of it. And then a couple of last clues about just where the politics is here, because you can tell a lot actually from complaints how politicized they are. Take a look where it's filed. Right, it's filed in the same courthouse where Judge Eileen Cannon sits. That's to maybe get a crack at having her be the judge for it. And then lastly, take a look or listen to this one other clip with Attorney General Moody talking about maybe what her real motivation is here.
We know that Marco Rubio is leaving as senator of the state of Florida to go work for the Trump administration in January. That leaves his seat open. Ron DeSantis has to fill that seat, and your name has been floated. What's your response?
Well, certainly that's a compliment. Thank you to even be in that discussion of filling the shoes of such a great statesman and person like Rubio. I really, that's an honor.
So it's going to look very good for her internal campaign to be named to replace Marco Rubio, who's going to become the Secretary of State, if she is pushing forth this very MAGA, pro-Trump oriented lawsuit. So that might be what's really going on here. But we'll keep an eye on it for you, and that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate the comments, and really enjoying being able to talk to you more often. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Talk to you later.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.